How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000, and of course in this video we're going to closely monitor Tropical Storm Hilary, which is likely to impact Southern California at this time, and we could potentially see our first tropical storm landfall in Southern California in 84 years. The last time was in 1939, where the last tropical storm made landfall somewhere around Long Beach. Right now, what's forecasted is that this storm will make landfall somewhere around California at tropical storm strength. But take a look at the water vapor imagery right now, just off the coast of Mexico. We do see Tropical Storm Hilary looks fairly well organized for a tropical storm. Its wind speed is around 40 miles per hour, but you could probably tell it's rapidly intensifying at this point. We see a strong amount of rotation. The outflow is doing really well. We see the outflow clouds moving in all directions, which represents that there's just enough of a strong upper level high in the upper levels that's allowing for rapid intensification. That's allowing the storm to have a lot more ventilation, which means that the air in the upper levels is moving out, which allows more air along the surface to rise, and that's creating a strong convective environment surrounding the center of circulation. We're going to need to see a little bit more convection on the northern side before we can say it would be potentially considered hurricane status or somewhere that's close to that category, but it's pretty much inevitable at this point. We're going to see a hurricane out of this. The sea surf temperatures are very warm as well, hovering close to the 90-degree mark, and the wind shears very favorable, as well as the fact that there's a highly unstable environment just to the north of this storm, with not a lot of dry air that's expected to hinder it as it continues to head further northward, which is definitely unfortunate, as we're likely to see a major hurricane because of that. Here's a look at the latest run of the GFS model, and it's very concerning for Baja California as well as Southern California in the slightly more long-term future. We do see that the GFS model wants to rapidly intensify this storm even more compared to yesterday, where we see the millibar pressure drop down to 947 millibars. This would easily be a Category 4 storm, just a monster of a storm, and that's very concerning because even when it crosses over the cooler sea surf temperatures that would be associated with the Pacific as you continue to head further northward, if this storm is able to get this strong, or at least at a similar strength just before it begins its weakening process over the cooler sea surf temperatures of the northern Pacific, it could still be a powerful storm by the time it approaches Southern California, where it could still be tropical storm status. And that's exactly what the GFS model is forecasting here, and in fact does forecast that we're going to see a tropical storm like low pressure system make landfall somewhere along the coast of California, which again would be the first time that happened in 84 years. Southern California hasn't experienced a landfalling tropical storm, or even the center circulation being tropical moving over the state since in over 80 years, which is just insane. Pretty much everyone who's alive right now in Southern California hasn't experienced a landfalling tropical storm. So this is the uncharted territory we're seeing right here, a 988 millibar storm system moving up the coast of California, and expect, of course, heavy rainfall is a big concern, and we do see not a lot of inhibiting factors. There should be a decent amount of dry air that should entrain this storm once it's just off the coast of Baja California. That's where we're going to see a slight area where the dry air should spiral around, which should help at least weaken it a bit, but it's still expected to be tropical storm status by the time it approaches California, which is definitely very concerning. Expect gusty winds. Heavy rainfall is my biggest concern around Southern California, because many of these areas are expected to receive a year's worth of rainfall in just one day, and this is during the driest month of the year for Southern California, typically speaking. And to see a year's worth of rainfall in one day would definitely create potentially a historic and major flash flooding threat for Southern California, and that's something very concerning. The European model, while the European model does expect this storm to get quite strong with its millibar pressure dropping as low as 974 millibars, it isn't as strong as the GFS model. However, it seems like the National Hurricane Center and a lot of forecasters in general are leaning towards the GFS model a little bit more because it was a computer model that already handled this storm system better when it came to its trajectory as well as its strength. So I do believe it'll be even stronger than what the European model is forecasting at this time. And moving forward with the forecast, we see it'll begin its weakening process, but the European model still expects a tropical storm to be very close to the coast of California, and the European model does expect a higher amount of dry air to entrain the storm, especially on the southern side, but it won't be enough to stop this storm from being tropical storm force strength just off the coast of San Diego. And the European model does take a slight shift when it comes to the trajectory of the storm further westward, which will definitely be better news for much of Southern California. It could maybe directly impact the areas further north of the California coast, maybe the middle coast of California, anywhere between Santa Barbara and San Francisco. In this scenario, could experience heavier rain and gustier winds if the European model were to take a track further westward. But either way, whichever computer model ends up being the more correct one, California at this point it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to experience heavy flooding rainfall as well as gustier winds and strong swells along the coast and rough surf. And I wouldn't rule out the possibility of localized coastal flooding, especially during high tide in some of these areas. And if you're on the southern shore in California, because that's where all the winds and the waves will face towards. When it comes to a wind shear forecast, they're probably looking at this and stating that, oh, there's a strong amount of wind shear over this storm system. However, that's not the case. The strong wind shear you see just outside of the center circulation is mainly associated with the outflow of this storm system rather than an upper level low that's bringing a strong amount of wind shear over this storm, which are two completely different scenarios. When we see the wind shear that's more associated, the stronger wind shear that's more associated with an outflow, that's bad news, because that means that there's a lot of ventilation going on, which means that the air is diverging a lot more in the upper levels, which allows more air to rise, allows a higher amount of lift around the center circulation. So this should help rapidly intensify the storm as it continues to head further northward. The wind shear could increase by the time it approaches California, and of course the cooler sea surface temperatures will weaken it, but it should become strong enough and rapidly intensify fast enough to a point where even as it does weaken, as it moves up the coast of Mexico and eventually Southern California, it will still maintain just enough of its strength where it should make landfall somewhere along the coast of California as a tropical storm. Again, uncharted territory and pretty much a once-in-a-lifetime event for Southern California. So at this point, the trajectory is fairly certain with this storm system. There's going to be a small cutoff low that's going to move south towards Southern California, which is very rare for this time of the year. During the month of August, much of Southern California averages no rainfall at all, thanks to a big ridge that typically dominates Southern California. But in this case, a rare upper level low would move south towards California and allow an open area for this hurricane to move northward and directly impact Southern California. We also have a big ridge that's expected to bring record warmth to many areas of the eastern half of the United States, but also steer this storm up northward towards California. So the steering flows are all but certain at this time. We should expect a landfall, or at least a center circulation, moving over California. The computer models really have certainty, at least with that idea. Of course, there could be at least some variation with the trajectory. If this cutoff low ends up being a little bit further westward, I expect to track a little bit further westward, more like the European models track, where a landfall would be closer to Santa Barbara rather than San Diego and Los Angeles. But if this cutoff low ends up being a little bit further eastward and this ridge ends up being a little weaker or a little bit further eastward, expect a track further westward to where we could see the eye just move over the border of Mexico and California and not technically make landfall, because of course the landfall is when the center circulation moves from the ocean inland, but it's possible that the eye could be over land by the time it approaches California, which would bring more impacts to the deserts of California and Arizona. A big reason why it's rare to see a tropical cyclone move up towards southern California is because the sea surface temperatures rarely go above 70 degrees just off the coast, and which typically weakens a lot of tropical cyclones before they're able to make it to California. But in this case, like I said, this tropical cyclone is expected to strengthen strong enough to a point where even as it does weaken over these cooler waters, it will still maintain just enough strength to make it as a tropical storm to California. And the sea surface temperatures just off the coast of Southern California are slightly above average for this time of the year, which should slow down the weakening process just a little bit, where the sea surface temperatures are hovering around the low 70s when typically the sea surface temperatures would be hovering around the mid to upper 60s. So that could unfortunately help this storm slow down its weakening process as it moves up the coast. Here are what the ensemble members are forecasting at this time, and we do see pretty much all of the ensemble members do want to take the center circulation over land. It's still slightly uncertain regarding how far east or west it'll move, but California, it's inevitable at this point. The center circulation will move over the state, which is very, very rare. In terms of the model intensity guidance, the majority of computer models expect this to reach at the very minimum Category 2 status, a decent amount of them over major hurricane status. However, you have to keep in mind the model intensity guidance tends to underestimate the exact strength of tropical cyclones, so I'll definitely expect a Category 3 to potential Category 4 just before it enters the cooler waters further northward, which is definitely very concerning for Baja California and Southern California for in the future, because you're more likely to experience a stronger storm. Of course, one of the big impacts associated with this tropical storm will be the wave heights, where we do see the wave heights will be very high right around the southern portion of Baja California, up to 30 feet in some areas. The wave heights will weaken as the center circulation enters land, but we're still going to see a decent amount of swells move into Southern California. So San Diego, expect beach erosion, rough surf. Definitely don't go out in the water because there should be a strong amount of rip currents, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility of a strong coastal flooding there. And even further northward, up the California coast, even as far north as Oregon, the stronger wave heights could move up along the coast. So definitely pay close attention to this all throughout the coast. In terms of the wind speed, especially in the higher elevations of California, especially, you could experience wind gusts well over 80 miles per hour, and I wouldn't be surprised in localized areas in the higher elevations you experience wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. And along the coastal cities of California, like San Diego and Los Angeles, I'd expect sustained winds anywhere from 25 to 35 miles per hour, more specifically around San Diego, with wind gusts potentially over 60 miles per hour in San Diego, and in Los Angeles, potentially wind gusts up to over 40 to 50 miles per hour, especially in the higher elevation. So this could certainly cause power outages, trees down, and along with that heavy rain, it should create very bad road conditions. And this wind could even extend as far north as Nevada, which would definitely be very concerning. And but however, I will state that the biggest threat associated with Tropical Storm Hilary as it moves up the California coast will be the heavy rainfall. So there's a forecasted amount of rainfall over the next 5 days over the southwestern portion of the United States. And this is very concerning because a large portion of the California deserts should experience rainfall anywhere between 3 to 6 inches. And for some people, that might not seem like a lot over a 5-day period. However, context is needed. For one thing is that the 3 to 6 inches of rain is expected to fall in just one day, which is a very heavy amount of rainfall anywhere in the United States. However, it's even worse due to the fact that this is happening over the deserts of California, where the deserts are expected to receive a year's worth of rainfall in one day. And there's, of course, in deserts, there's barely vegetation that's able to hold a lot of that water. So flash flooding is definitely expected over the deserts of California, even extending as far east as Arizona and as far north as Nevada, Las Vegas area. And San Diego and Los Angeles could experience anywhere between 1 to 3 inches of rain, a little less than what you'd experience, of course, in the higher elevations and in the deserts, but that's still certainly enough to cause a high amount of flash flooding, especially since you haven't experienced very heavy rainfall in quite a long time over those areas. So the ground is it's a lot easier for the ground to get oversaturated in dry areas, which means that flash flooding is inevitable throughout California if this were if the rainfall ends up being the case. Here's the current forecast from the National Weather Service. We do see the National Weather Service expects this to become major hurricane status, and then it'll, of course, weaken once it moves over the cooler waters. But we do see Monday 1 p.m. this is still tropical storm status over the state of California. As right now, the National Hurricane Center is expecting a tropical storm landfall. This will be the first time it happens in 84 years. Just mind-blowing, once in a lifetime event, like I said, for California. So definitely stay prepared. I'll say flooding will be the main threat associated with this storm system. So here's my more in detail forecast when it shows a wind speed. I'm expecting the storm to be around 50 miles per hour by the time it makes landfall in Southern California, but we do see Baja California could experience major impacts with a hurricane moving through and heavy rainfall. But make sure to prepare for California for the possibility of flooding rains. And yeah, guys, this is definitely just mind-blowing to see. I've never seen Southern California with the projected path right over its area when it comes to a tropical cyclone. If you were to tell me that there's a tropical storm making landfall in the United States in late August, the first thing I'll think of is that it'll be either in the Gulf of Mexico or maybe impacting the East Coast. But no, we're seeing the rare scenario where it's going to move over Southern California. So definitely keep this in mind, guys. But that's it for now, and I thank you guys for watching.